She stepped through the heavy wooden doors expecting fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, and a panel of tired interviewers, but instead sunlight poured through stained glass and spilled across white roses, ivory ribbons, and rows of guests dressed in celebration. In that single stunned moment, her heart dropped to her feet, because the place she had entered out of desperation and hope was not an office or a conference hall. It was a church alive with a wedding, and every eye slowly turned toward her as if fate itself had just cleared its throat. Before the story unfolds further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Journal. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Her name was Maribel Cruz, and it was a bright weekday morning, the kind where the city felt awake and possibilities seemed close enough to touch, yet just out of reach for someone like her. Maribel had spent the last 3 years waking before dawn, chasing buses, and collecting rejection emails like invisible scars. She was qualified, capable, and quietly resilient, but life had taught her that effort did not always equal reward. That morning, she clutched a worn folder holding her resume, recommendation letters, and the last thread of belief that today might finally be different. The email invitation had said the interview would be held at a private venue owned by a charitable foundation. The address led her here. She assumed the church was rented space, maybe a hall behind the main building. She never imagined this. As Maribel stood frozen at the entrance, the organ music softened and confusion rippled through the guests. Her simple navy dress, scuffed heels, and anxious posture made her look painfully out of place among tailored suits and silk gowns. She felt her cheeks burn, embarrassment pressing against her ribs. Every instinct told her to run, to apologize, to disappear back into the world that rarely noticed her unless she made a mistake. But something held her there. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the feeling that her life had already been paused long enough. The bride was absent from the altar, and the groom stood alone beneath an arch of flowers, tall and composed, his presence commanding without effort. His name was Alaric Voss, a man known in business magazines as a visionary billionaire philanthropist who had rebuilt industries and funded hospitals, schools, and shelters. People spoke of his wealth often, but rarely of his loneliness. As Maribel's eyes met his, she expected annoyance or anger. Instead, she saw something else entirely, a quiet shock that mirrored her own, followed by a thoughtful stillness, as if the universe had just whispered a secret only he could hear. Maribel finally realized she was blocking the aisle and tried to step back, but her heel caught, and the folder spilled open, papers fluttering across the polished floor like fragile birds. The sound echoed through the church. She knelt quickly, hands shaking, gathering her scattered hopes while the weight of humiliation pressed down. This was how her chances always seemed to end, not with dramatic failure, but with small, crushing moments that reminded her of her place. As she rose, expecting to be escorted out, something extraordinary happened. Alaric Voss stepped forward, his movements calm, deliberate, as if he had decided something irreversible. He picked up one of her pages before she could reach it. It was her resume, creased from being opened too many times. He studied it not like an intruder's mistake, but like an answer to a question he had been asking for years. The wedding guests murmured, unsure whether they were witnessing a disruption or destiny rearranging itself in daylight. The officiant hesitated. The flowers seemed to hold their breath. Maribel wanted the floor to swallow her, yet she could not look away from Alaric's face, from the strange gentleness that replaced the expected irritation. In that moment, something shifted inside her, not hope exactly, but recognition. She had spent so long feeling invisible that being truly seen, even in confusion, felt overwhelming. The truth behind the wedding was complicated. The bride who was supposed to arrive had chosen duty over love, agreeing to a strategic marriage meant to strengthen corporate alliances rather than hearts. Alaric had known this, accepted it, and still felt the hollow ache of compromise tightening around his future. When Maribel walked in, unpolished and unprepared, carrying nothing but her sincerity and struggle. It was like a crack of daylight breaking through a carefully constructed life. He saw not perfection, but truth, and it stirred something he had buried beneath contracts and expectations. Maribel was escorted to a side room eventually, her heart racing, convinced she would be scolded or dismissed. Instead, time passed differently. The wedding was quietly postponed, guests asked to wait, whispers filling the pews. Alaric spoke with his family and advisors, his reputation as a man of logic at odds with the decision forming in his chest. He had built his empire on bold moves, on trusting instincts others feared. This felt like the boldest of all. When he finally returned to Maribel, the light from the stained glass painted colors across her tired face. She expected questions about why she was there. Instead, he asked about her life, her work, her dreams. No one had asked her that in years, not really. She spoke haltingly at first, then with a quiet passion that surprised even herself. She spoke of caring for her younger brother after their mother passed, of working nights while studying, of believing that kindness mattered even when the world felt indifferent. What began as a mistake unfolded into hours of conversation, empathy building where formality had once ruled. Alaric saw in Maribel the humanity he funded from a distance. She saw in him not a billionaire, but a man standing at a crossroads, afraid that success had cost him something essential. The church, filled with daylight and waiting hearts, became a place of truth rather than ceremony. By early afternoon, the sun had shifted, casting long patterns across the floor. A decision was made, not announced with spectacle, but with quiet certainty. The wedding would continue, but not as planned. The alliance would be broken, the expectations shattered. Alaric chose authenticity over arrangement, courage over convenience. Maribel, overwhelmed and terrified, faced a choice of her own. To step into the unknown with a man she barely knew, or return to the safety of struggle she understood too well. She thought of every door closed, every interview that ended politely but coldly. She thought of how fear had guided her steps for too long. And she thought of the way Alaric had looked at her, not as a solution or a symbol, but as a person whose story mattered. Under the bright, honest light of day, she said yes to possibility. The ceremony that followed was not flawless. There were whispers, raised brows, and broken expectations. But there was also something rare and electric, a feeling that everyone present was witnessing a truth being born rather than a tradition being repeated. Maribel walked down the aisle no longer as an intruder, but as herself, heart pounding, courage trembling but real. The vows spoken were simple, rooted in choice and respect, promises shaped by the knowledge that life could change in an instant. In the weeks that followed, the world reacted predictably. Headlines speculated, critics scoffed, and social media buzzed with disbelief. But inside the quiet spaces of their shared life, something steady grew. Alaric did not try to mold Maribel into an image. He listened. He learned. He watched as she bloomed when given safety and support. Maribel, in turn, discovered strength she never knew she possessed, standing beside someone whose world had once seemed unreachable. She continued to work, not out of necessity, but purpose, eventually leading initiatives that connected Alaric's resources directly with communities like the one she came from. Their partnership became known not for extravagance, but for impact. Schools reopened. Shelters expanded. Lives shifted, not because of wealth alone, but because of empathy guided by experience. Maribel often thought back to that morning, the way her heart had nearly given up when she stepped into the wrong place. She realized it had never been the wrong place at all, only the wrong expectation. Life had redirected her, not gently, but truthfully, showing her that worth was not measured by titles or perfect timing, but by the courage to keep walking forward when the path made no sense. As daylight continued to shape their days, Alaric found peace in simplicity he had once overlooked. He learned that love was not a transaction or a strategy, but a choice renewed daily. Together, they proved that beginnings could come disguised as mistakes, and that kindness, when given room, could rewrite even the most rigid scripts. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that hope can appear when you least expect it, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and stay connected with us here at Kindness Journal. Your engagement helps keep stories of compassion and second chances alive. Before this story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what moment moved you the most, or share a time when life surprised you in a beautiful way. Your words may inspire someone else reading them today. Maribel's life did not become perfect, and neither did Alaric's, but it became honest, purposeful, and filled with light. The church that once echoed with confusion became a memory of transformation, a reminder that sometimes the door you open by accident is the one that leads you home.